Hello and welcome in. My name is Joshua Sarge. I am the founder, along with my wife, of the KBN and the founder of My Name is Champion. Today in this video, I'm going to break down for the business owners that see this where your ideal time investment should go. Obviously, many times we talk about money and where you should put your money, but I want to talk about time because it is the one thing you can't get back. And I believe as a Christian entrepreneur, we should be investing our time incredibly wisely because it is not our own. The breath in our lungs is not our own. So I'm going to talk about when you are building your business, if you were brand new in this, or even you have a business that, maybe you're trying to figure out how to scale it. We're going to talk about where your time should go so you can get the best return on that time in your business. So, who am I? Obviously, like I just said, we founded the KBN and My Name is Champion. But also, what I do for businesses is actually help multi-six-figure businesses, typically $500,000 or more, and seven-figure businesses scale to multiple seven figures by using the principles that I will be sharing, helping them grow, helping them bring in more revenue. Because in the end, if your business does not have a system that allows it to grow and bring in revenue, it's hard to really say that it is a business. That does sometimes upset people, but the truth is we don't want to take the calling and the gifting lightly, right? That we each individually have. We want to co-labor with God correctly, meaning using the wisdom that he gives us and the wisdom that he surrounds us with to excel and impact in a proper way. So when we talk about the investment of time, there's really three different things that I am going to talk about. And this is not just some mindset stuff, but it is real tangible understanding that you could then apply to your specific business, whatever that is, whether that is a service business, whether that is a product business, whether that is online or local. Obviously, every business should be online to some degree, but whether you're serving a local area or, across the country, across the globe, whatever that is, whether you're doing e-commerce, or like I said, home services, doesn't really matter. So the investment of time, ideal investment of time, we want to be very, very careful to not waste time. And, as an entrepreneur, like I said, if you're self-employed and you're fine with that, fantastic. This applies to you. If you are self-employed and you want to scale so that you can hire people to help with these things, fantastic. It really doesn't matter. This is just true no matter who you are, no matter where you are in business, no matter, if you haven't even made your first dollar, this is true for you as well. Ideal investment of time. So the three things that you do want to put time into, and I can share some stories with you from the standpoint of mistakes business owners have made, people that I know personally, other stories that I have heard. But the first thing that we want to look at from your time, and it is very important that you, like I said, that you don't waste time, but also that you know how to prioritize the right things. Because in truth, for most businesses, there's one thing holding them back. And I can do, a whole talk on that, a whole video on that. But there's something called the theory of constraints. For example, if an automobile factory, think of all the different pieces of an automobile. We'll keep it very simple. Let's talk about, steering wheels and, transmissions, right? Okay. So say that factory can produce 10 steering wheels a day. We'll keep the number simple. Maybe it's actually 10,000, but like 10 steering wheels a day, but only 2 transmissions each day. The question is, how many cars can they produce a day? Obviously, you're not factoring in all the other products or all the other pieces or anything like that. But just think about those two things. Well, if one is 10, if steering wheels are 10, they can make, and then transmissions are 2, well, they could only at best make 2 cars per day because you need both in a car to make it operate successfully. Okay. So what if that same company puts all of their time into workshops and new systems and processes to produce more steering wheels? What if after a couple months they are now able to produce 20 steering wheels a day? How many cars can they make? The answer is still only 2 a day because they didn't do anything to fix the constraint in that scenario, which was the transmissions. So whether they can do 20 steering wheels a day or 100 steering wheels a day, if they can only do 2 transmissions, they can only make 2 cars per day. Okay. So with that understood, you need to start understanding and applying that to your business. What is the thing? What is the constraint? What is the bottleneck that's holding you back? So when you're putting your time into your business, you're not working on things that are actually a waste of time. Now, many times when we are not making enough, in terms of revenue, we're not bringing in enough, sometimes act like that wasn't really the plan or that it's okay. You can have whatever goal you want to have. I just know that if something is not growing, it is dying. If something is not scaling, it is decaying. And I'd rather have growth problems than death problems in a business, for sure. Okay? So the ideal investment of time, we can look at building, we can look at selling, and we can look at serving. Okay, so building, if there's nothing built from a standpoint of any sort of service in place, any sort of products that have been created, then it's very hard to sell. Not impossible, but it's hard to sell. And I would say, and this is just so we're on the same page, this is not a 100% before the other. Okay. Now, I do think that you need to probably have some sort of concept or something built for the most part before you can start selling. However, it definitely does not need to be completed before you can sell it. This is why pre-sales, things like that, pre-orders work. But you definitely need to have a concept or something so that you can offer it well. I would also, if you know you're a procrastinator, I would not be in the habit of selling things that you have not yet built because, you may never get around to it. And you can obviously put yourself in some hot water. So building, you need to build whatever the service is. You need to establish the product, at least conceptually, before selling. And then obviously you need to sell the crap out of the thing. Okay. You do not have to be the world's best salesman, but you are your business's number one spokesperson. Okay. And then serving. So servicing, fulfilling, delivering the product, the service, whatever that is. So here's the thing. You can clearly see, if I go over here, you can clearly see how, and I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, how if you are out of balance with these 3 things. And I'm not saying that they need to happen all 100% you doing all of them at the same exact time. If you're on a phone call trying to, pitch a service, it's kind of hard to then be building it in mid thought and then, delivering for another client at the same time. So I'm not talking about that. However, in the grand scheme of things, these all should be happening at the same time. Right. And obviously if you don't yet have clients, you're brand new, then you're not serving anyone yet, but you understand. And that is the sweet spot where all of these things are happening in a coordinated effort, right? Because if you focus only on building your thing and selling your thing, but you don't ever build a way or automate a way to serve the thing and deliver it, then you have poor fulfillment. Which then, we talk about local businesses and Google business profiles and reviews and all that. Horrible, right? That's when you have like the 1 and 2-star businesses. And you obviously don't want to start a business with that. So you want to make sure that you have something in place to deliver, right? And then if you're focused on building your services, building your products, having all of that, and then fulfilling it, right? Like we have all the customer service, we have everything in place. Like, okay, fantastic. But you're not ever focused on selling it, then you have no new sales. Makes sense. And then if you're focused on selling and serving, but you haven't really built anything, then you have a poor product or service. Which, if you only have two out of three, think of it like a chair or a stool. If you only have two legs, a stool needs at least three to stand. At least. If you talk about pillars, if you only have two, it's going to collapse, right? So you don't want to try to erect a structure that is immediately going to fall over because you're not focused with your time. But one of the biggest things is just, people say ignorance is bliss. It's absolutely not true, because if you go in only ever focus on building, again, I hope you have something else in place to pay the bills. Because if all you ever do is build, well, you're never going to get any clients or customers. And obviously, even if you did, you wouldn't be able to fulfill what you promised, right? Or what you're trying to promise. So yes, you want to have things in place, but perfection doesn't exist. So much of entrepreneurship is making a mess and cleaning it up later. Okay. So, like I said, if you are thinking like, and that all sounds great and I see where my time should go, but I just want to hire people to do it. Fantastic. Obviously, there are different ways to, raise money or have money for a business. And if you are blessed enough where, maybe you got loans and or funding from some other source or whatever, maybe investor, whatever it is, and you can hire out of the gates, fantastic. Don't think that you should just be absent from the business. I actually think what happens many times is when people do that, they become too hands off, and then they can't get a beat on the business, and they are no longer a part of it. And definitely when you're starting out, the business needs your DNA. If it's something that God called you to, why would you be trying to escape it? But we don't want to focus all of our attention on building. And then we don't want to focus all of our attention on selling. Obviously, you do need to sell, right? You are your business's number one spokesperson, spokesman, spokeswoman. Does that mean you need to literally be the one making the calls and going to the site visits? And like, not necessarily, but if you're new, like I definitely would be. And then does it mean that you need to be the one fulfilling the service or the customer service for products, or like, no, but for my wife and I, we've bootstrapped everything that we've done. So it was, right? And obviously, yes, you do want to scale to be able to focus on that as your business grows. That's why you need revenue in obviously it depends on the business, but you want the business to be bringing in, obviously it depends on the business. There's so many different types. There's e-com, there's information, there's traditional service businesses. Like there's so many different types of businesses and business models. So the growth can vary a lot. But for a traditional business, like you want to be doing a few $100,000 a year before you're hiring people. I know for like information type businesses where you're, coaching or doing things online, if you're trying to hire people before that, I would definitely question, what are you doing? Obviously, if you're already busy or working a job and doing that, you don't have much time, like, hey, that 100% can make sense, right? It just has to make sense financially and with your time. But here's the thing. Here's the kicker. I talked about 3 different places your time should go when you're serious and dedicated to building your foundation. But here's the other thing. When we look at this, if you don't have anyone coming into this, who are you selling to? It's a valid question. So, what I would say is that if you don't have any of that going on, you need to be there too. So, when I look at selling, that's literally having the conversations to sell the good or the service, the product, whatever it is. If you don't have any consent. I'm talking about a system. I'm not talking about a random referral. Now, here's the thing. Every business is different. Local businesses many times can get consistent referrals. Typically, that doesn't scale long term. It may keep you in business, but it typically doesn't create enough momentum. The way I look at referrals is it should be more on the back end of how to multiply a business in its growth, not the front end system that brings people in. But think about this. If you are already focused on building, already focused on serving, like delivery and fulfillment, and then you're already selling and all that, like, well, how are you going to promote at the same time? Because here's the truth of it. If you're not bringing consistent leads, right? If you don't have a lead system in place, again, it's very difficult to say you have a business because every single day, every single week, every single month, you're unsure where the next client is coming, where the next customer is coming from. But this is why I actually love paid ads, because it buys back all of your time. Yes, it takes some money, but I would say until you're doing at least $100 a day in paid advertising, you need to be putting in real time to promote it. So whether this is cold calls, whether this is, cold DMs, whether that's, social media content. And I do think even if you're doing paid ads, you should be doing social media content because it builds friendship and trust as well. Like, you need to be doing something to bring people into your sales funnel if you want to build a real business. If you want, hey, maybe you're doing 100K a year, right? And that's great from the standpoint of self-employment, but maybe you feel led, like, no, it's time to start doing more, right? Well, how do you do $100 a day? What if you're only bringing in, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 grand a month? I will say this. When I first started paid ads, I learned how to do all this on my own. I felt prompted by the Holy Spirit. I didn't know why, because I never needed it before. When I started learning all that, I started my first coaching business and scaled to $500,000 in under 4 months. And I started on $5 a day in ad spend. So it's not something that you need, like, I don't have $5,000 a month to spend on, like, okay, then don't start there, right? Obviously, if you do have $100 a day, fantastic. But if you have $5 a day, start there and then start scaling it 10, 20, 40, 80 and beyond. Within a few months, going from $5 a day, I was up to like $250 a day in ad spend, right? Just within a few months. You can do the same thing any business that you have. You want to be smart, okay? Now, here's the thing. If you're promoting like crazy, but you don't have anything built and you're not able to sell it or serve it, then the question is like, what are you doing, right? So a lot of times we think we're starting a business when all we really have is an idea. And it is true that many people end up focusing on all the wrong things. They put all their time into the wrong things, buying office furniture, renting an office, doing all the different things. Like, you don't even need any of that to start making money. It is true that all it takes is to sell, like have an idea of a way to add value and have something that the value that you're adding to someone, they'll pay you for it. That's how simple it is, right? But you do need to obviously be able to build that, be able to sell that service. But if you're not promoting and bringing people into that sales funnel, into that sales process, you're not talking to people you know, people you know of, people you don't yet know, then the business isn't really going anywhere. So I wanted to cover that from a standpoint of like, hey, like many times, like, again, if we look at the basics of like, what is a business? Well, it is starting a business. It's kind of like a muddy sort of concept. Yeah, get an LLC or start, some sort of organization, corporation, sure, on paper, and do the legal things and get the bank account and all the different things. But from a standpoint of the business itself, like if the business is not generating revenue, it's not really a sustainable business. And if you don't have a system in place and you don't know where to put your time, it's more of a hobby than anything else.